Yeah, that's an interesting question, because at the end of the day, it's sort of a lot has been said about how in the long term China would show commitment to Africa, and certain commentators are talking about the fickleness of it, or it wouldn't last, or it has to move to another stage. Well, what's happening in the Chinese economy now, I think, is really bringing that to the boil, in the sense that China, with its economic slowdown, and of course like the more sort of dramatic market crash that happened earlier this year, and of course the fact that the bulk of Chinese trade with Africa is linked to commodities. When the prices go down in China, the commodity prices go down. This really is a time where China either steps up to the next level to show that broader political commitment, which they always talk about in their diplomatic circles. And I think, in my opinion, I think they will continue on this trajectory, and they will continue to give out money. I mean, one of the problems with FOCAC is they tend to double the amount of money they dole out every year. And of course, this can't go on forever, and particularly now within this context of China's domestic economy slowing. So it's going to be really interesting to see the kinds of amounts that are handed out. I haven't seen necessarily any expectation management from the Chinese side toward the African side yet, other than perhaps talking about the new normal and sending that out to the world, not just within China domestically, but hey guys, this is a new world we're living in now, and we can't have 10% growth in China, and perhaps likewise we can't double our $20 billion to $40 billion this year, although that may happen. And certainly I guess the question is how it would happen. And one of the things within China is it's the shifts in its internal economy. This idea of the new normal is low-end manufacturing obviously becoming more expensive in China as middle classes, as wages rise, things become less competitive, and this talk of outsourcing lower-end industries to other parts of the world, including Africa. I mean, we think of Southeast Asia as the first place it would go. State Councillor Wang Yi, I think in March this year, he talked about this thing called the Three Networks and Industrialization project, which I've heard bits and bobs about it, but I haven't heard it sort of being aggressively promoted again and again by the Chinese political machinery, although it might increase. And the idea, I guess, would be to move some of those factories to Africa, thereby, I guess, increasing, doing a number of things. Number one, as you said, foreign direct investment is down in Africa from China. It never actually was that high, to be honest. There's a lot of other countries which have much higher FDI. It would help address that problem, and of course that also leads to the whole sustainability thing in terms of Africa needs industrialization, not taking its commodities out, because it creates a much more sustainable form of economic growth. It also removes the issue of, not removes, but perhaps mitigates certain degree the low-end polluting industries by moving some to Africa. That in itself is a very interesting question when you consider the whole environmental aspect of FOCAC and China's growing environmental aspects. I mean, are you going to solve the problem by simply moving it to other places? And certainly African side needs to be much more engaged in that side of the debate. And then, of course, there's the hype. There's often you get these grand statements of this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and 10 years down the line, perhaps you're still waiting for things. So the other thing, of course, is to what degree will this actually happen at all, or will it go to Africa? Why wouldn't it go into Western China, where they still need economic growth, or, as I said, other parts of neighboring Asian countries? So I think that there'll probably be an emphasis on that, and certainly infrastructure, as continuing with the infrastructure. Because another thing about China's domestic economy is that as it's slowed down, you've got a lot of quite powerful state-owned enterprises which now have less work than they had before. And I imagine these state-owned enterprises have their own quite powerful political lobbies. So keeping them in work, keeping them in business is also a political priority domestically within China. And so this whole aspect of, the Silk Road, the Maritime Silk Route, the One Belt, One Road policy, and the Three Networks and Industrialization policy, which seems to me like the African addendum or a version of the Silk Road or the One Belt Road is all about getting state-owned enterprises out of China and doing work elsewhere, because of course you've also got the surplus capacity now in China. They've built pretty much everything they can build. You have ghost cities now all around, so that surplus capacity needs to be go outwards, and that serves China's domestic interests, but it also feeds perfectly into the whole narrative of South-South cooperation, development. I was in Xinjiang province a few months ago on a government tour to promote this One Belt, One Road policy, and I mean their plans are phenomenal. And again, I don't know how much of it's going to happen, but literally opening up that region all the way to Europe through linkages of road and rail and whatnot. And the same in Africa. We've heard earlier in the year, again, a very sort of woolly declaration of this massive infrastructure projects. I think it was announced at the African Union early in the year. Again, whether it happens or not, I don't know. But all of this is, I think, a very smart strategy in the sense that it at once keeps these companies afloat, gets them business, but on the other hand, it feeds directly into the narrative of South-South development. And interestingly, not just the South anymore, because when you look at sort of the new Asian, the AIIB, the new Asian Infrastructure Bank, you can see that a lot of Western players are also involved in it now. So with the exception of America and Japan, pretty much all the major countries have stepped up to the table. And so this is also an interesting dimension to it, as it's not simply a South-South thing. It reminds me of what Ian Taylor says about how you shouldn't see China, you should see multinational capital, basically. And again, whether this, to what degree, this I think will be, this policy I think will be implemented more aggressively. It seems like something that the Chinese are very serious about.